If you're curious about the Griffin Armament MGL line of suppressors, stick around because we've got an awesome video in the works. Okay, if you're clicking on this video, I'm guessing it's because you're interested in large frame ARs. And if you're like me, you've seen the large frame AR used with success in the global war on terror for more than the past 20 years. There's some really iconic setups out there that I know we all would love the ability to own. Something like an M110 SAS style rifle or a Mark 11 Mod 0, maybe even an M110 K1 style rifle, 16-inch precision build. They're awesome setups, a ton of fun to shoot, but if you've looked into these markets recently, you know finding the components for these rifles is next to impossible. Many of these components are out of production, and when you do find them in stock and available, they command crazy prices. I recently saw one of these Mark 11 Mod 0 suppressors sell for nearly $10,000. The same case on an original Knights Armament carbine suppressor sold for nearly $10,000. That is wild. So those of us that enjoy shooting these rifles, if you can find these components, they're so expensive, I almost feel bad running rounds through them. Now with that, Griffin Armament saw the opportunity and they brought an exciting new product line to the market. And that is the MGL line of suppressors, or military gate latch. So if you look at each of the three suppressors here on these rifles, you'll notice they each have a latch here at the back of the suppressor, and that's how it secures to the rifle. So if you're trying to complete one of these kind of old school clone type SR25 builds, these are the suppressors that are available now and are going to work very well for you to finish out that build. Now what do we have in this product line? We have the MGL-10, which is represented here on my M110 style upper. This suppressor would go on an M110 rifle. There's a flash hider under here, as well as the SR25 gas block that mounts the suppressor. We'll take an in-depth look at that in just a minute. The MGL-11, this goes on a Mark 11 Mod 0. Naked muzzle here, but gas block that the gate latch can slide into. And then the rifle here is a 16-inch SR25 ECC, again with the same gas block where the gate latch can mount. And this also runs an M110 style flash hider under the suppressor. So in order to run these Griffin Armament MGL suppressors, you have to have an SR25 rifle set up with the proper muzzle device and proper gas block. These are SR25 compatible suppressors. These are not clone suppressors. So what you're going to find in these suppressors will likely be better performance than the original product. So I understand this MGL-10 is actually lighter than the original M110 suppressor from Knights Armament, but dimensionally, it's almost identical with regards to length and thickness on the suppressor. Understand, from a sound suppression standpoint, Griffin Armament's done some of their own testing. Sound-wise, they're very comparable to the original Knights Armament. Flash-wise, I expect them to perform very well. Now, what are we going to do in this video? I intend to give you an in-depth look at the MGL-C as well as the MGL-11. Unfortunately, I'm not going to put any rounds for this MGL-10. The barrel on this rifle is completely trashed. Maybe due to my own negligence and poor maintenance schedule, I'll roll a clip here showing the pitting in the barrel and the crown. I don't want to risk running any rounds through that MGL-10 or my original Knights Armament M110 suppressor. But the cool thing is, these suppressors all run the same baffle stack. So as far as sound suppression, flash suppression, blast suppression, should be pretty similar given the baffle stack is the same across the product line. The only difference you'll find in length will be from the gate latch to the muzzle and how these actually mount up dimensionally there. So what else is in store in this video? Well, I plan to give you an in-depth look at each of these rifle setups and how the suppressors attach so that you understand where each of these suppressors will mount and how they mount. Then we'll move down to 100 yards. I want to give you a close-up look at how these two rifles perform with regards to group. We'll take a look at point of impact shift, we'll measure that, and then we'll stretch out to distance here, maybe out to about 800 yards, and we will repeat that point of impact shift on these two rifles to ensure the performance I get is consistent and repeatable at the 100-yard line and out to distance so that you can make impacts suppressed or unsuppressed. I also intend to put a handful of rounds through each of these suppressors without ear protection to give you an idea of how it sounds to me as a shooter and bring you along for that experience. And then finally, once it gets dark out here, I'm planning some really cool night vision content to give you an idea of how these look for flash. So certainly a suppressor knocks the noise down, knocks the blast down, knocks the flash down, makes the overall shooting experience much more enjoyable. But in the case of these suppressors, they also allow you to complete some of these very iconic old school rifle builds. Really excited about this product line from Griffin Armament. Excited for you to join me as I run through my first rounds on each of these suppressors. I've got probably a couple hundred now on the MGL-11, as well as probably about 200 rounds on the MGL-C. So I have enough time on each of these, I think, to speak to my experience with them, and then certainly I'll show on video the kind of results I get out of each of these rifles. So from here, let me give you an in-depth look at each of these suppressors and how they mount. Then we'll move down to the 100-yard line and we'll start shooting. We'll wrap up the video here with a summary around my thoughts on each of these suppressors. Can't wait for you to join me. Here we are with the MGL-11, my Mark 11 Mod 0 clone rifle. This is a factory Knights Armament rifle, started out live as an SR25 EMR that I swapped the rail on, added the front sight to give it that Mark 11 Mod 0 setup. Now the important piece is how the barrel is configured on this rifle. Now remember, for MGL or military gate latch, to remove and install the suppressor, I will use the gate latch here at the rear. There's a little safety lock that I'll slide over and then raise the gate. Twist on the can a little bit, there we go. With the gate up, now I can just twist this can off to expose the muzzle. Now you'll notice here on this Mark 11 Mod 0, my muzzle is naked, so the suppressor actually indexes off of the muzzle here, so you have to make sure this is dimensionally correct for a Mark 11 Mod 0 to mount this can. And then the gas block here, as you can see, it's got these little scallops, which is where the gate latch slides down and secures the rifle. Now, it's important to note the Mark 11 Mod 0 as well as the MGL-11 require an indexing pin at the 6 o'clock position on this rifle. This is going to be different from all of the other rifles to make sure you do not mount the wrong can on the wrong rifle. To install this, I just raise the gate, slide it over the muzzle onto the gas block. Now this one is quite tight, so I'm just going to twist it on. My gate dropped down, and now I'll just latch it in, and now I'm installed. Let's take a look at the next rifle. Next up will be the MGL-C. Now in this example, this is my factory SR25 ECC. This rifle is set up with a 16-inch barrel, which is how I will mount the MGL-C. So again, similar to the Mark 11 Mod 0, I have the safety latch here that I will slide over and then raise the gate, maybe a little twist to raise the gate. And now I just slide the suppressor off. And what you will find on the MGL-C, again, 16-inch barrel, will be an M110 style flash hider. This is available from Griffin Armament, or if you have a factory original Knights Armament, that will also work. But then I have my gas block right here, again with the scallops. Now the interesting piece about this gas block, there's actually two pins. There's a 6 o'clock and a 7 o'clock pin that the suppressor uses to index properly so that you don't install the wrong suppressor on this rifle. So again, I will just raise this gate and then slide it over the flash hider. This one doesn't fit quite as tight as the MGL-11, and then I will just drop the latch down and then make sure it's latched in. And now the suppressor is secured to the rifle. Super quick and easy to install. A little bit of maybe movement here, a little bit of a rattle. That's very normal in these suppressors. That will tighten up as you get carbon in there from firing rounds. Here we are with the MGL-10. Now, as I mentioned, this suppressor would be compatible with an M110 style rifle. So what does that look like? Again, here at the rear of the can, we have the latch that we slide over to raise the gate. Twist here to raise the gate. And now I can just slide that suppressor off. And what you will see for the MGL-10 or the M110 is an M110 flash hider. In this example, this is a factory Knights Armament flash hider. And then a gas block here again with the scallops that the suppressor will index on. So very similar to the MGL-C in that it indexes off the front flash hider and then off of the gas block to make sure it is lined up true with the bore so you don't get any kind of baffle strikes. To mount the suppressor, it's very simple. You just raise the gate, slide it over the flash hider, and then into the scallops, drop the latch, and you're good to go. Now the M110 or the MGL-10 requires an indexing pin on the bottom of the gas block at the 7 o'clock position. I know everyone is going to be curious how these rifles perform at 100 yards for accuracy, velocity, and point of impact shift with and without the can, so that's exactly what I just tested. I started with the Mark 11 Mod 0 and the MGL-11. On my left dot here, I fired 5 rounds with the suppressor on it. And as you can see, these were the first 5 rounds after I zeroed. The barrel had cooled quite a while, so I fired these 5 rounds, which went into a group, 0.75 inches, so beautiful accuracy, averaging about 2540 or 2530 feet per second. I think we had a slow round in that group. I then removed the can, which I'll show here in a clip. Fired these 5 rounds right here after immediately removing the can, barrel still warm after this group. That's roughly a 1-inch group right here, and my point of impact only shifted up about 0.6 inches, or as I measured in the reticle, about 0.2 mils. So that is beautiful point of impact shift, almost nothing. I think we'll be able to stay on reasonable sized targets without adjusting for our point of impact with or without the can on this MGL-11. I then reinstalled the can and came over here to the right dot where I fired this 10 round group, measuring overall 1.6 inches. I do have this low flyer here. Not exactly sure what that was. It felt like a good shot. Could have been me, could be something with this load in this rifle. Again, it's just a generic load that I threw together. But ultimately, as you can see, this group went right back exactly where it should. So very little shift on the MG-11, right back where it should. If you remove this low flyer, group's about 1.2 inches. So beautiful accuracy. Again, average of about 2540 feet per second with this 175 SMK. Seems like the BC, the true ballistic is calculating, is about 0.250 to 255. So we'll plug that into our calculator, shoot the distance here in just a little bit. Next up, I swapped over to the SR25 ECC and the MGL-C. And as you can see right away, this rifle is not as accurate as the Mark 11. So first up, I fired these 5 rounds right here. Again, I zeroed the rifle and that barrel was cooling while I was shooting the Mark 11. These 5 rounds right here went into a group of 1.75 inches. As you can see, there's a bit of horizontal spread here. Maybe some of that spread is me, position, trigger control, don't know, doesn't really matter. Group is 1.75, it's pretty well zeroed up. So I like that performance. Then I removed the can, which I'll show the clip here, and immediately fired a 5 round group, which landed up here. So I have 3 rounds on the paper and then 2 rounds right here in that little piece of duct tape. Overall, that's a 2.25 inch group. There's none of the horizontal spread, but there's a bit of vertical. So not great accuracy, but ultimately it'll illustrate the point we're trying to show here. As you can see, my point of impact pushed high about 3.75 inches, or maybe 1.1 mils, which is roughly what I measured in the reticle. Now some of this might be a 10 power optic with a lot of mirage, but ultimately about a 2 MOA group there, and it pushed up 3.75 inches. I then reinstalled the can and fired a 10 round group, which you can see here. So I had a beautiful performance. As you can see, right when I reinstalled the can, I went right back to where I was. So exactly back to 0, which is what we want. These 9 rounds were beautiful, and then my 10th round happened. I have no clue what happened on that round. It flew way outside. I'm guessing that was probably me, maybe my position. But ultimately, if you measure these rounds right here, that's about a 1.5 inch group. If you add this into it, it's about a 2.5 inch group. So that flyer is pretty bad, but being horizontal, I'm guessing that was likely me and my error. But as you can see, as far as the performance of the can, here was our 0, here's our shift, and then boom, right back to our 0. So that's what we want. The question, as I test further, is will this be repeatable? We'll find out. Just remember, when I remove the can, I'm gonna have to take out about 1.1 mils to get back down to where I should be. So with that, now let's shoot some steel out at distance. Let's run some rounds through each suppressor out at distance. I've got a 2/3 Zipzik out there at 495 and a full-size Zipzik out there at 765. So we'll shoot the 16-inch with the MGL-C first, see how it runs suppress. Maybe we'll remove the suppressor, see how the point of impact is, put the can back on, see if it returns. So with that, 495 is calling for 3.5 mils of elevation to get out there. And I have a slight wind out of the right. Probably call it 5 to 6 o'clock, so I'm not going to come off the plate. Back kind of low on the plate. Come up another 3/10. So I'm going to call that 3.8 or 3.9. So at 765, it's calling for 7.5 mils. Let's go ahead and dial up to like 7.9, just based on the low impacts that I'm seeing there. So there we are, 765. And I'm going to favor just right edge. Back. I believe, might have been a T-post though. Let's come up another 2/3 tenths. So we're at 8.2. So with that, I'll remove the can and we'll adjust for a point of impact shift. So out there at 765, let's come down. So we're at 8.2, let's come down to 7.1. See how we're doing. A little bit high. Okay. The left edge. She's not running that well unsuppressed. Alright, well, you got the gist. Not running that well unsuppressed. So, with that, let's put the can back on. We'll dial back up to that, call it like 8.2. And let's see if we can impact. Off the left edge. What were we down there? Like 3.7 at 495. So, from what I'm seeing, removing the suppressor, dialing the correction is consistent, at least out there at 765 yards. Put the can back on, dial on the exact same hold that we saw working. It does appear to be repeatable. You'll have to let me know what you saw in the comments. Also notice my rifle isn't cycling that well without the suppressor, so the suppressor is definitely helping the function of this ECC. Now let's try this with the Mark 11. Here we go with the Mark 11 Mod 0 and the MGL-11 suppressor. 495 calls for 3.3 mils, so I'll go ahead and dial that on. Just like that. And very calm out here, so I'm not coming off the plate. So that looks like kind of right edge, I believe. Favor left. Elevation looks good. So there's 3 impacts at 3.3 mils. Now for 765, calls for 7 mils, which I dial on. Interesting that those impacts are pushing to the right edge. Here we go. So I'm going to favor, let's just go dead center. Alright, impact. I believe that's a little bit low right. Left edge. Now, let's remove the MGL-11 suppressor. Unsuppressed, we need to come down about 2/10, which we just did. Let's get back on it here. Here we go. Alright. Let's put the can back on. Oh, that was my last round anyway. For 765, now that we have the can back on, I'll come back up 2/10. And here we go. So can't miss there. Let's go down to 495, which was 3.3. And we missed with the right round, or the last round, off the right edge. But ultimately, it seems like these cans are very consistently coming back to where they should when I reinstall them. With that, let's see what else I can come up with to test these cans. Next up, how do they sound? I know that's what we're all wondering. Normally I don't shoot without ear protection, even suppressed, but in the name of science, I've removed my Warbird Ear Pro. I'm going to put a couple of rounds through each rifle and each suppressor without ears to give you an idea of what it sounds like to me as the shooter. I also realized in that previous segment, my microphone actually wasn't working, so I have a new microphone set up. I'm wearing a microphone, and then I think this will be really cool. I've got a second one down range, probably 250 to 300 yards in the bottom of that valley. We'll actually be shooting over it. So I think it's going to be a cool experience for you as the viewer. You'll hear what I hear here at the rifle, and then a split second later, I believe we'll hear the round go over top of that microphone. It's down quite a bit versus where the shot will be, so I think it'll be a cool sound. Target's out there, it's a full-size IPSC at 730 yards. This rifle I had to dial up 7.2 to get out there. And we have quite a wind, kind of from the 4 o'clock, so I'm just gonna favor right. We'll just start at a mil. But again, the point here is more sound, so here we go, 1 mil right. All right, off the left edge. As a shooter, really very comfortable. A little bit of a pop in my right ear, but no ringing. Let's send another one. Off the left edge again. Let's go 2 mils. The right edge. The right edge. There's an impact. 1.5 mils. So really, as a shooter, I don't have any major discomfort. I definitely do hear a little bit of a muffle here in this right ear. It's no ringing, but I definitely wouldn't want to fire a ton of rounds just because of the ejection port pop here. Left ear, no problem, sounds very quiet. Now, let's try the MGL-11. Here we are, MGL-11 on the Mark 11 Mod 0. Same target, 730 yards. I'm up 6.5 mils with this rifle. Still no ear protection in. I'm going to favor right, call it 1.2. Back. Again, a little bit of a pop in my ear, nothing terribly uncomfortable. Let's put these in the dirt. And there's 5 rounds through the MGL-11. Again, quite comfortable. Again, a little bit of a muffle in my right ear, no ringing. But again, I wouldn't fire a ton of rounds that way. If I was hunting or something, it is very comfortable. Really, actually quite a nice sound, especially out of my left ear. So how about we test flash suppression? And what better way to do that than out here in the dark under night vision? Now I think I've got a really cool idea. I hope it works out for you as the viewer, as well as I have it planned out in my mind. Obviously you can see right now I'm on the Mark 11 Mod 0, and I have my PVS 30 installed, and I'll be using that to shoot that full-size IPSC down there at 730 yards. If I make some impacts, great. If not, not a huge deal. We're more after the flash. Here at the shooting position, I'm using my Psionics night vision camera, and that should give you an intensified image. It is a night vision device, so it is definitely going to blow up the flash to give you a look at what it would look like through a night vision device here close to me. Now, the part that I'm really excited about, I actually have a rifle downrange. It's certainly clear. I have my PVS 27 on it, and I have the trigger cam, and that rifle actually is looking back at me as the shooter, and I hope to record. That rifle's probably down there at about 500 yards. So what I hope I get is some footage, obviously here at the shooter, what it looks like close up, but also from a night vision device about 500 yards downrange as I shoot over the top of it. So hopefully it all works out. I know the trigger cam was having a little bit of trouble on the night vision device, but maybe it will be enough to give you a flash or give you some kind of indicator of what you can see from downrange. So with that, 730 yards on a full-size IPSC. And we've got 10 rounds loaded up. Now my rifles have been sitting for probably an hour and a half, so definitely this is going to be a cold bore. And there we have it. So that was 10 rounds. Pretty difficult shooting out there. There was so much dust around the target, I actually couldn't tell where the target was. So hopefully the downrange camera had some pretty cool footage for you. Now we'll swap over to the MGL-C and see what it looks like for flash. As you can see, we've swapped over to the ECC with the MGL-C suppressor. I've got 10 rounds loaded up. I'm going to fire at the IPSC down there at about 730 yards. I'm having a little bit of trouble finding it down there in one of the shadows, but I don't want to run my IR and blind the PVS-27 that's downrange. So we'll just send the rounds and see what kind of footage we get around the flash. So I'm going to aim in the area that I think the target is, and we'll see if we get lucky. All right, so there's 10 rounds for the MGL-C. Now, as the shooter, I'm seeing a little bit of flash on the first round through the night vision and through my left eye, which I had open. And then after that, I'm not seeing any flash. So you're gonna have to let me know in the comments what you're seeing. From here, we're gonna move into the summary. Unfortunately, I've already filmed the summary, so I won't be able to summarize the night vision experience during those comments, so we'll just have to hash it out in the comments. Let me know what you saw for flash. For myself, I'm seeing almost nothing as the shooter. I cannot wait to see what the PVS-27 sees looking back at us. Well, that's the end of the shooting for the video. Now let's take a couple of minutes here and just kind of wrap up with my experience shooting at each of these suppressors. Now, unfortunately, I have to film this closing before I actually have a chance to shoot the nighttime footage, so you'll have to let me know in the comments down below. What did you think about the night vision portion of this video? What did you think about the flash performance out of this MGL-C or the MGL-11? I'd love to chat with you and hear your thoughts. Or let me know, what did you think about the lineup in general? What did you think about the performance of each of these suppressors that I shot throughout the video? Do you have an SR25, maybe an iconic clone type build that you're looking to complete using one of these MGL suppressors? Maybe you've got that Mark 13 Mod 5, long range 300 Win Mag clone. This MGL-11 would be a great addition to that setup. So I'd love to chat with you, but really quick, let's run through my experience running each of these suppressors. Now you saw the 100-yard performance out of each of these rifles was pretty decent. This Mark 11 Mod 0, this thing is an absolute shooter. I had one round that dropped a little bit low, but aside from that, all of those rounds that I fired at the 100-yard line, suppressed and unsuppressed, were about 1.1 inches or less. The one that dropped low pushed that 10-round group out to about 1.5 inches, so not terrible. I wish I wouldn't have dropped it low, but it is what it is. I still had no problem making impacts on a full-size IPSC out there at 800 yards. With regards to the suppressor point of impact shift, I'm very happy with it. You saw me at the 100-yard line, shoot my first group, remove the can, fire my next 5 rounds, and they only pushed high about 0.6 inches or 0.2 mils. Put the suppressor back on, and boom, that group went right back where it should. I then pushed this rifle out on steel, something like 490 yards as well as 765, and we saw that performance replicated. I made my impact suppressed, removed the can out there at 765, dialed down 2/10, connected with the plate, put the can back on, use the same dope. So in my opinion, what I'm seeing out of this is consistent and repeatable performance from the MGL-11. Happy with the accuracy, happy with the point of impact shift. On the ECC or the MGL-C, very similar performance. I was a little bit surprised at how much shift there was. So at the 100-yard line, this rifle's not shooting the 175 SMK that well, maybe 2 to 2.5 inches. I actually plan to play around with some other bullets, maybe some 155s or some 168s to see if I can tighten those groups up. But with regards to this video, we saw about 2 MOA for the first round, or first group suppressed. I removed the can, and that second group pushed high, unsuppressed, by about 3.5 inches. So a pretty big shift there. Call it 1.1 to 1.2 mils high. I put the can back on, and then my group went right back where it should, centered up. I fired 9 beautiful rounds into about 1.5 inches with the 10th round that flew to the right quite far. Maybe that was me, maybe it was a setup, unknown, but those 10 rounds went right back to my point of impact where I had it zeroed. So as far as shift, I believe this can is also repeatable and consistent because I did replicate that again at 490 and 765 yards. No problems out there at 765. When I removed the can, I dialed down 1.1 or 1.2 mils and connected with the plate, put the can back on, went back to where I was, and I was connecting. So I'm really excited to see each of these cans are repeatable and consistent with regards to point of impact shift. Accuracy wise, very impressed with this rifle, hoping to improve this rifle, but it is what it is for performance in the video that we saw here today. Sound performance, I'm happy with it. Like I said in the video, I normally don't shoot even suppressed rifles without ears. I normally always wear ears. I'm very protective of my hearing. I like to shoot suppressed because it allows me to wear just electronic ears. In this case, I was running the Warbird rechargeable ear protection. If I wasn't running a suppressor, normally I would run foam plugs as well as electronic ears. So to me, the value in a suppressor is the ability to remove the foam plugs, wear just the electronic ears, reduce the blast, just have a more enjoyable shooting experience. So ultimately, sound-wise, I did fire 5 rounds out of each rifle without ears and really without much discomfort. As I mentioned in the video, my left ear, the sound was great. I could hear that bullet flying down range. I could hear it impacting the plate. My right ear, I did get a little bit of pop out of the ejection port. Really wasn't uncomfortable, really didn't ring. It was just kind of that maybe muffled type noise. I'm sure you've all experienced it at some point throughout your shooting career. So not uncomfortable, actually quite impressive. If I was hunting or I had to fire a couple of rounds without ear protection, it would be fine, no discomfort. Flash, this is one we're gonna have to engage in the comments. I can't wait to see how it performs when it gets dark. I can't wait to bring you along for the journey. What I plan to do, and I hope this is what happens in the video, is hit that full-size IPSC out there at 600 to 800 yards. So we'll have to chat about that one in the comments. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you sticking around to check out all of this video. I hope you're excited about this product line. I know I certainly am. I didn't mention in the opening of the video, Griffin Armament did send me each of these 3 suppressors, but I actually purchased 2 of these on my own. So one of them was sent to me for use on the channel, certainly for content creation, but I did purchase the MGL-10 as well as the MGL-11 on my own because I wanted these suppressors to be able to build out and complete each of these rifles. So, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this gave you an in-depth look at what to expect out of the MGL line of suppressors from Griffin Armament. Now, if you made it this far, I'd like to ask your help in growing this channel. It's really simple. You can like this video. You can comment down below so that we can engage and chat about my experience or what you saw in the video. But most impactful would be if you subscribe. That way you're in line for my next video drop. Don't forget to check me out on Instagram. Thanks for watching. I'll join you in my next video.